I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I'm talking with singer, producer, and composer Claire Dickson, who on this very day is releasing her latest album, Balance, on New Amsterdam Records. And as you may know, but maybe not, I am currently in Thailand, which means that my time zone is quite far ahead of where it usually is in the UK. So at the time of me recording this intro, I don't think the whole album is actually available yet to listen to on Bandcamp or directly at New Amsterdam Records, but it should be within the next few hours, depending on what time zone Bandcamp is synced with. I'm never quite sure. Anyway, it's imminently going to be available. But even if you are listening to this the very second that this episode comes out, there are a couple of tracks that you can listen to. And I, from the first moment that I heard this record, was really quite captivated by it. It's a kind of a mysterious, ethereal, experimental, improvisational, organic and yet also synthetic type of music, folk elements, classical elements, jazz elements. I was really quite fascinated to understand how Claire makes this music. And I was also, another incidental thing I was quite fascinated to discover from looking through her different releases. One of the comments about her first album, Starland, was on Bandcamp. It says, Starland is Claire Dickson's debut album created on a boat in the Arctic Circle and her apartment in Brooklyn. So I was very curious to understand what that was all about. And I found out in this here interview. So I highly recommend that you check out Balance, and I hope that you will enjoy this conversation. You can actually go to Claire Dickson's website for various different information, clairedicksonmusic.com. You will see that there are a few dates that she's got coming up. I didn't mention this at the very beginning, but Claire, although originally from the US, is Berlin based. So at the moment, I think there's a show coming up next month in Berlin. There is something else coming up somewhere else too, but I now don't see it in front of me. But yeah, you can go to her website, you can go to Bandcamp, you can go to New Amsterdam Records. All of these will link you towards music and information, etc. And with all of that being said, you can follow me at Tom Osman Sounds. You can go to my website, tomosmansounds.com, for my music. My writing's about music. My music is on Bandcamp. It is on Ampwall. You can check these places out anyway. They are friendly places that do support the musicians whose music is placed upon them. And with all of that said, Claire Dickson, take it away. Pressure roll over. Need another angle. Nearness moves on the slender chrome. Claire, nice to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's really snowy and cold and slushy in Berlin right now. Very wintry.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't know this, but I used to live in Berlin. And
Okay, cool.
my day job, so to speak, is I'm an English teacher, and I've lived in various different places. So I started teaching in Prague, and then I was in Dusseldorf, and then I was in Berlin. So as I travel around, I've retained students, so I get to find out about the weather in Dusseldorf and Berlin and Prague. So I heard that there'd been snow.
Yeah. There's this whole like political thing too, because they aren't like putting salt on the sidewalks
Oh yeah.
because it's bad for the environment, supposedly.
Ah,
So like everyone's just like sliding around and like breaking bones and
okay, interesting. Yeah, good for the
yeah.
environment, but bad for the emergency services.
Yeah.
So I can tell from your accent, but I already knew anyway by reading up a bit about you. You are from America. You actually from originally Brooklyn.
I'm from the Boston area originally, and I moved to Brooklyn, I guess in 2019, and then lived there for 5 years and just recently moved to Berlin.
So what took you to Berlin?
I did a master's here in music and also just wanted to move, wanted to try something else out. And I had visited Berlin a couple summers before and really loved it. And also, there's so much great music happening here that's feels really um, resonant with what I'm doing. And yeah, it's been great. I thought I'd move just for this program and see how I liked it, and I've wanted to stay. So
So how long have you been there now?
about a year and a half.
And so when I moved to Prague, I definitely had some kind of culture shocks there. But then I had this weird thing where I had like a reverse culture shock. Once I'd lived in Prague for long enough, when I came back to the UK to visit, like it was weird to hear people talking English around me. And there were other things I'm like, oh, this is just like, it doesn't feel like my familiar environment anymore. So do you feel like fully adapted to Berlin? Were there any things that were particularly weird for you that took a while to get used to?
Um, hmm.
I
I
don't
think
have any
I'm
experience of
still,
Brooklyn, so I don't really know how
yeah,
Brooklyn and Berlin compare. Maybe there are quite a lot of similarities.
I think they are similar in that they're both cities that have um a lot going on and a lot of different pathways through the city and different temporalities that are coexisting. Berlin is much quieter, which I like. But then also sometimes I miss the hustle and bustle of New York. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think overall I really enjoyed living here because I feel like there's just a bit more ease and like a laid backness to daily life. So,
And I was thinking, like Berlin sort of culturally is associated with industrial music, and the music that you make is not what I think anyone would call industrial music. But on the other hand, I get a sense that you are potentially quite influenced by your environment. Like we can talk at a certain point about your debut album, which I think has got a really fascinating backstory too. But I get partly from that your environment is something that can be fed into what you're doing creatively. So have you found that with Berlin that it's had much of an influence on you in terms of what you're creating?
yes, definitely. I think I have been making music that is quieter and sparser since moving here. I made all of the music I that is on the album that's coming out. I made in New York and my debut album as well. And but I just put out an EP in November that I made here.
Yes, I listened to that as well, and that makes sense because I thought like, wow, this is very kind of sparse and ambient. So that's interesting if that
Mhm.
one is a product of Berlin.
Yeah, I feel like it is like um
Is that's true that you're talking about?
exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's still hard. I'm still in it, so I don't know exactly how Berlin is influencing me, but the music that I'm making, like working on right now, is very, very different from what I was making before. And I think that, yeah, I feel like I really take in my environment. Like my music is really inspired by listening, and listening is like the first phase of any project for me. And that includes, yeah, that's very relational and environmental.
Yeah.
So,
And so you've alluded to the fact that you made music and you've put music out in between starting the process of Balance and then Balance coming out, which is coming out on the 13th of March, I think it is, if that's
Yes.
right. Yeah. And I read as well in the press release that it's been like a 3-year journey
Mhm.
to put the tracks of Balance together. And I think not just through, but you've had other releases that have come out during that time. So tell me how the process of making Balance and that music has
Mhm.
compared to your musical creations elsewhere.
I guess I started Balance sort of on the heels of the release of my first album, and it's it started very much as a solo practice that I would just return to every day and um, kind of just slowly tease out these songs from and these sound worlds. And in parallel to that, I was collaborating with a lot of musicians in New York. And I guess the releases that came out or the projects that were happening alongside Balance were collaborative projects. And yeah, I guess maybe there's by nature of like, having to set aside time to come together, those projects can sort of get their feet off the ground a little faster. But I think the my songwriting process really has to do with this returning to the material every day. And I think I just like there were times when I was like, oh, is the song done? Like, is this it? And then like I would hear something or I would even like do something in my collaborations that made me want to just kind of keep going deeper into them. And that really happened up until the final moment when I had a big studio session where I added a bunch of live musicians. So, yeah, I think it's these all of the tracks feel like sculptural in a way to me because I've like kind of just been like tinkering with them and molding them for a long time.
So how difficult was that in the end to finally be able to go, right, this is done now. It's complete.
um, I think when you know, you know. Yeah, I mean the mixing process also, I think I took my time with that. Just like one of the joys of working with sound is to me is to be particular and just like go as far as you want with it. And yeah, like the joys of creating and making art is like those decisions when you are sort of saying, I want to go further with this, or this is just how I like it. Um, Whatever that means in a given moment, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're like working really hard on it. Sometimes something comes out and you're like, well, that's it. But yeah, I think I really took my time and enjoyed all of those moments of decision making right up until the final moment.
And I was wondering as well, with this being a fairly long process, did you find it all along the way that you would have musical ideas or lyrical ideas that you'd be working on and progressing with, and you'd get to a point where a fair amount of time had passed, and you go, this doesn't really represent where I'm at anymore. I'm going to have to get rid of this. Or did everything sort of evolve in a harmonious way?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think sort of um both. Like there were definitely moments when yeah, I think you're always like taking steps forward and because that's the only direction you can go in sometimes. But then once you've taken the steps forward, there are moments to sort of like revise and take it back. And yeah, I think that kind of editing process is feels really um yeah, I guess like the songs themselves, there's always like an essence of the song to me that like feels natural and organic and like don't mess with that. And then the way that I build around that maybe comes in and out of focus in a way where it's like, oh, this feels really right now, and other times no. Um, but yeah, I think I'm always like, when there's a spark there, I really trust that spark. And I also feel like there are always moments when artists are like overly self-critical of what they're doing, and it's just part of the process. Sometimes if I listen back, I'm like, oh, what's going on? Be like, okay, that might be just today.
Yeah, true. No, that's very true.
It's like looking in the mirror. Sometimes you look in the mirror and you're like, what? Who is that?
Indeed. Going going a few steps back, or going quite a few steps back, tell me a bit about the musical environment that you grew up in. What was your
Um,
musical world like as a child?
yeah, I grew up in a house where a lot of music was happening. My dad plays clarinet, and that's his job. Um, and I was always going to concerts as a kid, and my family was always singing together. When I was uh, around 11, I got really, really interested in jazz. I became obsessed with Ella Fitzgerald, and I checked out all of the recordings she had ever made from the library. And this was back in the day when this is how you did it. You take the CD and burn it and put it on an MP3 player.
Totally. I had exactly the same existence when I
Yeah.
was living in the north of Scotland.
Yeah, so I did that with Ella for a while and then just like jazz in general and started singing. I had been singing before. I sort of like grew up always singing, and I did some musical theater for a while, but then once I got into jazz, I was really captured and just kept seeking out more opportunities to do that.
And do you remember what it was particularly about Ella Fitzgerald that inspired you?
Just the carefree and creative um, way that she improvises and uses her voice as in so many ways. Um, like instrumentally, rhythmically, uh, harmonically. She's just like really inside the music, and her voice is incredible. Uh, yeah, it was this recording of Lady Be Good where she does a really, really long improvisation. It's actually sort of an improvisation that she, I think, probably like wrote for herself or transcribed for herself at some point and performed like variations of it multiple times. And that piece is just so amazing. And I became really fixated on that um, recording and just like the creativity that she's bringing in all of these like referencing other songs and all of the scat syllables. I was just so excited by that as a kid.
I mean, I guess if you were coming from a classical background, that sort of improvisational style could be quite liberating because that's not the classical way generally. It's like you have the piece and you can have interpretation up to a point, but there's not that element of freedom, or there's not that amount of freedom, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't actually coming from a classical background. I sang in choruses, but singing more folk music, and um, I also participated a lot in the Revels, which was this kind of volunteer chorus show, and there was like a yearly show that would center around the solstice traditions of a particular culture. And yeah, so a lot of I was I guess that touched on some classical music, but I wasn't classically trained at any point.
Okay, I made a leap there just because you said that your dad was playing clarinet and that was in the house. But oh, right, you had a classical background then.
I listened to the the Harvard radio station plays classical music every morning for the first 3 hours of programming or something. So I would listen to that every morning with my dad. But then it would switch to jazz.
So at what point did the like did you start having singing teachers or some kind of formal training?
I think when I was 13, I started working with um, this amazing vocalist, Aubrey Johnson, who was uh, a grad student at New England Conservatory. And I did, yeah, we worked on sort of like jazz material together. Less technical training at that stage and more like kind of, yeah, like vocal exercises, warming up the voice, like basic vocal hygiene, but then also just a lot of like kind of exploring the repertoire. And then I guess in college, yeah, from college, from high school to college ages, I was like kind of taking vocal lessons, but on like kind of shorter stints, like through workshops, mostly. And when I was in college, I studied with Theo Bleckman for a summer through a kind of like um, summer apprenticeship. And that was really big for me. His approach to vocal technique inspired me a lot. And yeah, I think I started like, well, yeah, I was doing like practicing kind of with all of these different influences throughout my high school and college years.
And before you got to the stage of releasing music under your own name, did you have other recordings that you were a part of?
Yes, I collaborated with my close friend and we were students together in college, Camila Ortiz. We had this duo project that actually we just released an album with that as well. We sort of kept working after school and we're doing a lot of co-writing, co-songwriting and recording. And then yeah, I mean I was like singing in a big band in high school. Um, I had like multiple bands and projects in college, sort of just always being part of the scene of the musical community wherever I was. And that's one of the things that I love about coming from a jazz background and being in these communities of improvisation, of improvisers. It's really about coming together and being with sound together. And I find that throughout my life, there are always kind of collaborations and um, musical relationships that are in the beginnings, middles, and kind of, I guess not end, but like paused. It's very ongoing.
That's nice. I know on an incidental point on Discogs, you are listed as an American jazz singer. Thinking about what you're doing musically at the moment, how satisfied are you with that description?
Um, yeah, I think that it's fine.
It'll
Maybe
it'll do.
I wouldn't put it there if I were rewriting. Maybe I should try and figure out how to go in and edit that. Um, I am adjacent to jazz. I'm in communities of musicians who are like very dedicated to the art form and the lineages of jazz. So I think it's sort of like a yes and maybe.
Fair enough. So we briefly touched on your first album, Starland, and as I mentioned, I'd like to get a bit more from you about how that came together because I was fascinated with the description on Bandcamp that was saying that it was created on a boat in the Arctic Circle and in your apartment in Brooklyn. So tell me about how being on a boat in the Arctic came to you putting together that album.
Yeah, I had the chance to do a residency in the Arctic Circle right after I graduated from college. It was a group of 30 artists from different disciplines, not just music. And I ended up spending a lot of the residency like listening and journaling and self-reflecting and just sort of like singing in the environment. And then doing some field recordings, but it was just so the experience of being there really changed me and just, yeah, being in such a remote place so far from civilization, being sort of like woken up to this other kind of realm that is not in the grasp of humanity in the same way as other places and as cities. And just like listening to the silence. And when I got back to New York, I just felt like I was seeing everything differently and was sort of in on this other perspective. And I had started making some songs there and I continued them and just kind of like kept creating. And for me, like the experience of being in the Arctic had this sort of like magical quality where you felt like like, yeah, like a lot of emotion coming from the landscape and like it really loosened my imagination and like I was having crazy dreams about different like sort of like mythology. Like I felt like very like these mythical kind of images coming to me a lot as I was there. And so that also made its way into the music. And yeah, that's a little summary of that album. It was particularly interesting because I got back from the trip in November, I think, 2019, and then very shortly after the pandemic started. So I had a lot of time to sort of reflect on the experience. Um, it sort of had a lot of echoes into the pandemic time for me.
Yeah, that was a strange time indeed, to say the least.
Mhm.
Thinking about from a production point of view, because if we stick with Starland for a couple of minutes, from what I understand, you had some guest guitar on that
Mhm.
album, but other than that, I think it was basically all created by you. So tell me a bit about your your background and your approach when it comes to the production side of things, because I'm curious as well what the instrumentation was or like what equipment you were using to make the sounds on that record.
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, for all of my music, I tend to work with a pretty Spartan setup and sort of like rely a lot on borrowing and like different tricks to make things happen. I'm really not a gear person. I did use the my like delay pedal a lot on that album, but yeah, it was like pretty much all like free synth plugins or synths that I made using free plugins in Logic. So, yeah, I'm really interested in using like open source tools and I yeah, especially at that time I was sort of like I just really started producing like 6 months before like I started the music for that album. And I was just like, yeah, it was at sort of the beginning of my journey in as a producer. I sort of made a lot of practice tracks and then like eventually I was like, okay, I think I can keep going with these. And I think like I feel a lot more experienced and confident and everything as a producer now, but definitely a lot of the habits and the ways of working that I developed when I was making that album are still with me. And I often look at the DAW as a very like open space. I often don't use like the tempo or the grid really, and it's just like kind of can be chaotic and can be um like sort of a space for improvisation is really what I want it to be. And so uh I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, definitely. And that's for me, that's links nicely then back into balance because I wanted to ask you about one of the tracks in particular. So one of my favorite tracks on balance, I would say, is Waterfeel. And
Hmm.
I think this is really a great illustration of what I get from the album in general, because you've as a whole, and I think this track really exemplifies it. There is this appropriately enough kind of sense of water to me. It's like water and glass. It's very
Hmm.
crisp. It's very clear, and it's like dancing in the light. That's kind of the sense I get from the sound. And I love the way that on that track you've got this rhythm that's like a 3/4 and a 6. And I was
Hmm.
listening to this and I was thinking, I like unusual tempos and meters and rhythms in music, but when it comes to creating music myself, I'm quite basic. I do everything generally from guitar. I'm not very sophisticated when it comes to putting things together. And I listen to a track like this and I think, how would I even like put this into a grid? But I guess from what you've just said, thinking about it in a grid isn't really the way that you put it together. So maybe taking that track as an example, can you give a bit of insight of like how you put that together?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your kind words. I guess for that track, it really grew out of this synth line that you're referring to that came off of my mini log. I often like start making music by just like kind of practicing, I guess, and like recording it. And I was practicing or experimenting, exploring my mini log, and I really liked this arpeggio that I came upon and started trying to get the sound more how I wanted it and just used that loop, which is a sort of grid, I guess, as the as a jumping off point. And then yeah, once I had that arpeggio, I think I like maybe started adding some other sounds that felt related and then once I'm at that point, I'll start like improvising along to it vocally and maybe I'll improvise for like, a minute and I'll listen back and I'll be like, oh, that part really felt right. And then kind of go into another instrument and see if playing along with that instrument feels right. It's very like based on intuition, based on ideas that emerge from improvisation. And then kind of like that, you keep doing that for many, many times um and then you end up with something that feels more solid.
And would you be performing any of these tracks during the course of the songwriting process, or they're all kept away hidden until they're completed in a sense?
Yeah, some of them make it into a live set because I was performing a lot through, and I do perform a lot. So a couple of the songs I was performing live in different ways. And I don't think sometimes I'll do like, a weird, different live remixed version of a song, like I'll just be like, oh, the melody for this one I really like. Here, let me rearrange it. And like instead of playing the arpeggio, I'll write some chords to it or something. So sometimes I do that. I'm not, I don't think I did it with Waterfeel, but yeah, I feel like once the songs can like, I don't know, stand on 2 feet and like walk around a little bit, they can wander into some different contexts. So
And in terms of live performances, you're sometimes playing just you're sometimes playing with other people? What kind of configurations have there been?
yeah, I've started playing solo quite a bit. I really like playing solo. Um, for this album, I'm really excited. The shows I have coming up, I'm going to play with as in a duo, and we'll be doing like kind of a live remix. And yeah, but I guess in New York I was playing with guitar, like a trio with guitar and drums, and then I would play synth.
And so very often people that I interview are from sort of a punk or a rock alternative sort of background. And as much as I don't like to reduce art to commerce, at a certain point, the financial aspect comes into conversation. Because even if people make art for kind of like pure, in a sense, purposes, everyone has to survive, everyone has to eat. And unless people are doing something totally different, which they support, so then they just do music and they don't have any financial dependency on it. I mean, even if that's the case, I guess if you put a lot of work and effort into something, you hope to get some kind of financial return out of it. So this is a very long-winded, roundabout way of asking you, in terms of the music that you make, is there some kind of financial return for that? And would that come more through live performances or through recordings?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really crazy time for to be an artist, I think, in this world. Like, so many arts institutions are being defunded, and like the ways that people used to make music are like ways to make money from making music are decreasing. And at this point, for my personal projects, like of the music output, they don't make any money. I think like my hope is to sort of make enough money from my art that I can like kind of keep the whole thing going. And by that, I mean keep my own future projects going, but also like the musicians around me, like help keep them going. And yeah, I mean I have like a day job that where I like make money to pay my rent because I'd much prefer that to like trying to monetize like the the music that I'm making. I think there are times when it's like shifted into like making more money from being a like performing with other people's projects or recordings or shows or whatnot, teaching. Um, yeah, when I think about like what goes into defining me as a musician, it's doesn't really have anything to do with the amount of money I am making or not making. So I guess that's my answer.
No, I know what you mean. Like, for me, as I said at the beginning of the interview, my day job effectively is I'm an English teacher, but I'm more and more spending time on the music journalism side of things. So it's like if someone asks me what I do, I want to say like, oh, well, I'm a freelance writer. But if they ask me how much what I actually make a living from, it's like, well, I make a living from being a teacher. But I'd like to say that I'm a writer.
Yeah. You can say whatever you want. I'm
That's
all
true.
for people to find themselves.
Yes.
So,
No, that's very fair. And so, like, again, sort of with the partly in the live topic and partly in the financial topic. So again, with a lot of people that I talk to, I get the sense that certainly in the rock world, if you play a show, having merch is really vital. And I don't know if for you in the musical world that you're in, that also holds true. Like if you play a show, will you have, CDs, maybe even t-shirts that you would be selling? I don't know if you do t-shirts for your music.
yeah, I think I will for this album. Yeah, I guess like I really am just like interested in making things that are interesting and good. So sometimes I think the business side of it I perhaps fall behind on a bit. But I also think those aspects of it can be creative too. And I hope to, collaborate with an artist and like make a t-shirt that feels really like this is adding to what I'm doing. So
I mean,
I
I
think
could
that
I could
stuff is
definitely,
great when it's yeah, supporting the vision and like
yeah.
all of that.
Well, just looking at the covers of your different releases, they're all striking in their different ways. I mean, you could 100% have the image from Starland used on a t-shirt, a mug. You could have all kinds of things, and the
Oh.
the the sculpture, I guess it is that you've got on balance. So tell me where that came from.
Yeah, that was a piece by a ceramic artist who actually I think she lives or she was at least like um presenting and working at this ceramic studio near my apartment in Brooklyn. And I would go to the sale, like the holiday sale, every year. And I just really liked her pieces that were in that sale. And I'm not sure like what made me think of having a photo of a ceramic piece on the cover, but I was just, in research mode, like thinking about what the image would be for the album, and I I think I just like went on her Instagram and saw this photo, and I was like, this is absolutely perfect.
I mean, it seems very fitting given the title of the album. I think also as well, there's something about the fact that the figure in the sculpture is turning away. So you
Mhm.
look at it and you think, oh, is this supposed to be representative of you? Is it just a figure? It's quite kind
Mhm.
of ambiguous, and I think the ambiguity, it raises a lot of questions that are just sort of interesting to have hanging while you're listening to the music.
Yeah, I like that as well. I like also that it's sort of like yeah, against a white background, there's that it's on its own. And yeah, she's sort of like performing, but also like maybe doing something for herself, playing, performing. It's sort of this energy that really resonates with the music for me.
And so you mentioned some shows coming up. Do you have any? I think actually maybe I did see on your website. Do you have some specific dates that are already booked?
Yes, I do. I'm really excited to play in Zurich next, at the Currents Festival, and then I'll also be playing at the Birds of Paradise in Utrecht. I'm playing at that festival, and I'll do a release show in Berlin at Morphine Raum, and then a couple other things in Berlin in April. Yeah, I think my website needs to be updated slightly, so I'm happy to send you a message with all of those
Yeah, that would be cool. I'll stick them into the
details.
description when
Yeah,
I
that would
when
be
I
great.
put the episode out. And in general, I do appreciate it when artists have got their own websites, but I do also understand from a sort of a promotional point of view, it's like people don't land on those things incidentally. So again, I'm into very roundabout questions. So I sort of, as much as I don't love the whole social media world. I sort of recognize that it's fairly useful and practical when it comes to marketing. So would I be right in thinking that Instagram is where people can most easily get updates of what you're doing with your music?
Yes, you would be correct.
That was a very convoluted question for something that was basically just yes or no.
Yeah.
All right, so Instagram is the place for people to go to then, and then they can be guided towards your website. And in terms of the release of Balance, then, are there going to be physical versions of this, or it's all digital?
At this stage, it's all digital, but I'm interested in pressing vinyl in the future. But
Vinyl is nice.
it'll start out as a digital release.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Claire, it was lovely to meet you. You make lovely music, so it was a pleasure to talk about it.
Thank you so much for talking to me and for all your great questions. Um, and I'll be sure to send you information on all the shows coming up.
Nice. Yeah, hopefully our worlds will align at some point and I can come and see you perform.
That would be amazing.
Pressure